Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good day to you. Welcome to Bayou Sports Talk here down in the Bayou of Louisiana, baby. We have a great show for you today. We have some good topics that we have to dive into and talk about, but we have to start off hollering at our fam. Guys, thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank you for being so supportive. And I am Kay, your moderator. Holla at him, coach.
It's me, Coach 67 Sports TV. Shout out to the awesome and amazing LDBC, Lions Den Boston community. Shout out to the greatest university in the world, the Southern University, home of the mighty Jaguars. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Yeah, dig.
All right, the baby of the bunch. Go ahead and holla at him, Ray.
Oh, what's y'all? What it do? It's the King, King Ray. Yeah. So just here to give my opinions. Debate some of these topics and hopefully agree on a lot of these topics. Joking. But yeah, just ready for a good show today. You
All
need,
right, Ray, get us started. Let's talk about boxing. What are your thoughts? What do you have for us?
I would like Coach to go first.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right, coach.
Well, in the sport of boxing, last week there was a nice card. First and foremost, Rolando Rolly Romero, he got knocked out by Isaac Cruz to pick up a 140-pound title, a junior welterweight title that was on the undercard. The main event was the Tywin Inferno, Sebastian Fundora. He was a late replacement for Keep One Time Thurman. Sebastian Fundora, he beat Tim Tszyu to become a champion at the 154-pound division or a junior middleweight. Now, some people think it was an upset. I really don't think it was an upset because even though Tim Tszyu, who's the son of former junior welterweight champion Costiel Tszyu, he wasn't no superstar. And the thing with the situation is basically Jamel Charlo, he went up to super middleweight and basically he laid down like a dog and Canelo beat him. And when he came back down to junior middleweight, basically he was stripped of just about all his titles. So Tim Tszyu was able to, capture a couple of them titles, and he was defending. He was going to defend him against Keith Thurman. Keith one time Thurman, he got injured again. He hasn't been too active the last handful of years. I mean, he's only fought maybe like a few times since about 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So since he was injured, basically Sebastian Fundora, because for those individuals that don't know, he's like 6'6", 6'7", and he's a junior middleweight. And he, of course, he was upset in one of his previous fights, but he was a last minute replacement. And one thing that's real like awkward about Sebastian Fundora is the fact that he's so tall. You would think a fighter of his height and his stature, there would be an outboxer, and they would use their jab to keep the shorter person on the outside and so on and so forth. However, Sebastian Fundora, he's an infighter, for that height, for him being as tall as he is. That was this theory at one point, especially on Queens of the Ring, shout out to the Queens of the Ring, where basically we was like, the reason why he's an infighter is because he has trouble seeing. Because they were showing in a couple of his press conferences over the years, like he has like extremely thick glasses. So he still wears glasses, but seemed like the thickness of those glasses has kind of gone down. So maybe he had some type of LASIK or whatever surgery. But for this particular fight, he did some infighting, but he did a better job of keeping Tim Tszyu on the end of the jab. many individuals feel like Tim Tszyu was winning, but at one point, because at one point during the fight, Tim Tszyu, he broke Sebastian Fundora's nose. And then at another point during the course of the fight, when they were infighting, basically Sebastian Fundora, he caught Tim Tszyu with an elbow, and he had a huge gash on the top of his head. And basically with that gash opening up, it did a lot of bleeding, and many individuals feel like at that point in the fight, the tide kind of started to shift, and Tim Tszyu's corner, I don't know if y'all remember when, this definitely was before King Ray's time, but years ago when Mike Tyson suffered his first loss to James Buster Douglas, his corner was extremely incompetent in terms of like they didn't have an in swell, they couldn't deal with like some of the minor issues, and in terms of his eye closing that a normal corner would be able to deal with. And Tim Tszyu's corner, they had that same type of incompetence. When a fighter has a cut, he is a cut man that deals with his cut. There's certain, of course, he has to be sanctioned by all the different sanctioning bodies for boxing, but there's certain substances you use to stop the bleeding of a cut, and they had no answer for the cut that Tim Tszyu had in the top of his head, and it was bleeding a lot. It affected his concentration for the rest of the fight, and Sebastian Fundora went on to win the fight. Now, the crazy thing about it, prior to the fight, the IBF ordered if Tim Tszyu won the fight that he was going to have to fight Terrence Bud Crawford next. But Tim Tszyu made it clear that he was going to duck Crawford and that he was going to fight. Basically, he was going to fight Errol Spence Jr. So, of course, he lost, but he didn't have a rematch clause. So, that was the big thing after the fight, because Errol Spence Jr. was at the fight. He got in the ring, and basically he made it clear that he wants to fight Sebastian Fundora next. So, of course, Fundora had a broken nose during the course of the fight. So that's the big thing. What's going to happen next in the junior middleweight division, because Fundora is going to be out with the broken nose. Tim Tszyu didn't have a rematch clause, so the IBF ordered Fundora to fight Crawford next, and Spence made it clear that hey, he wants Fundora also, and so they were asking him, hey, you're gonna fight Crawford, you're gonna fight Spence, and initially, he said that he was gonna fight, what the IBF mandated for him to fight Crawford next. Then, all the rumbles came out that he's not gonna fight Crawford. He's gonna drop his IBF title. He's gonna keep the WBC title, whatever, and he's gonna fight Spence next. And now he's saying he's gonna do the honorable thing and give Tim Tszyu the rematch that he deserves, because even though they didn't put it in writing, evidently he verbally agreed to give Tim Tszyu a rematch since he took him as a short notice opponent. So it's a lot of misunderstanding in terms of what's going to happen next in a junior middleweight division. Me personally, I think the best course of action would be if Sebastian Fundora and Tim Tszyu fought a rematch. Spence doesn't have an opponent. Crawford doesn't have an opponent. I just might as well go ahead and fight the rematch as far as I'm concerned. Now, some people were saying that basically Spence, since he took he had the car accident some years back. He took the savage beating of Crawford last July. Basically, they were saying that Spence, he needs a light touch in his comeback fight. And even if he did fight Sebastian Fundora, he's a game opponent, even though he has a one knockout loss. He's 6'6", 6'7". So even if he did fight Fundora, of course, Spence would be the favorite. But considering that he took such a beating to Crawford, like it wouldn't be an easy task. So to me, I feel like the best course of action would be for Fundora and Tszyu to fight the rematch. Supposedly it's scheduled for November. Spence doesn't have an opponent. Crawford doesn't have an opponent. They might as well fight the rematch. But from what I'm understanding, PBC, they have their hands all over the situation. Initially, they advised Spence not to fight Crawford. but Crawford made it clear that he wanted to fight. Spence made it clear that he wanted to fight Crawford. He went against his team's wishes, and he fought the fight anyway. Now, from what I'm understanding, basically his team is telling him that you don't need to fight this rematch with Crawford or whatever the case may be, because it took a little while for him to heal up with his injury from his injuries anyway. So his team, I guess, is advising him not. I mean, it's just speculation. They're advising him not to fight the rematch against Crawford. Me, he always been a game guy. I feel like if Crawford don't have an opponent, you don't have an opponent. Y'all might as well fight the rematch. And also, if Sebastian Fundora doesn't fight Tim Tszyu, then I think the PBC, they also advising him to fight Spence because he's a PBC fighter also. So PBC, they're trying to control things. And not only that, but Terrence Crawford didn't sign a long-term contract with the PBC. So I think to a certain degree, the PBC is trying to freeze Terrence Crawford out of this situation. So, we'll see how things play out in the junior middleweight division. But more than anything, as a fight fan, I want the best fighters to fight the best fighters. So hopefully Crawford and Spence could fight their rematch, and Tim Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora could fight their rematch. What are your thoughts on what I just talked about, King Ray?
I did see that Terrence Crawford did have a mandatory, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah. He was the mandatory for Sebastian Fundora. The IBF ordered him for Sebastian Fundora's next junior middleweight title fight that he was supposed to defend against Terrence Crawford.
Okay, yeah, and I also did see some speculation about Javante Davis and Javante
Frank,
Davis,
Frank Martin.
yeah, and Frank Martin. They say they're gonna try to get that fight done for June, and they said it was gonna try to put Benavidez on that same card as well.
Yeah. From what I'm understanding, Benavidez is supposed to be on the undercard.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, anything else that you would like to talk about for your boxing?
For the most part, that's about it because we know that we already talked about endlessly how Ryan Garcia and one of my favorite fighters, Devin the Dream Haney, they're gonna fight on April the 20th. But outside of last week's fight card and that upcoming fight card, like that, those are the two biggest things in the sport of boxing.
Okay, guys, let's move on to the NBA. Ray, do you want to start us off and let's get a little bit of NBA draft in there?
Yeah, sure. I'll start us off. As far as the Pelicans, they was on the road, but they're on like a 3-game losing streak. And the Western Conference is so good and competitive right now, is that if you win one game, you could drop like 2 spots. But if you win a game, you could jump up like 2 spots. So the Pelican is currently the 7th seed and they back in the playing tournament. But if the Pelicans win tomorrow against the Suns, they're gonna go right back up to the 6th spot and not be in the playing tournament. They got like 6 more games left in this season, and bro, they really need to drastically win 5 of these, like 80% of their remaining games, pretty much all of the games. They need to win them. But that goes to show you the Pelicans won like what 45 games, and it goes to show you like they could be in the playing tournament, But it goes to show you how competitive the West is. Zion is day to day, and I think Brandon Ingram just got reevaluated. So I don't know what Willie Green game plan will be. If I was him, I would high key play it safe and just rest them into the playoffs. But look, man, if you need Zion and Bi to come back before the playoffs to solidify that you don't have to play in the play-in tournament, then do that. But yeah, see, Pelicans are 45 and 32. It would be nice for them to get the 50 wins. It would really be nice to see them get the 50 wins. But I think it might be too early for. I wouldn't say it's too early for draft, but as far I feel like they'll focus more on the playoffs than the drafts, because I mean the college season coming towards an end, But we still got the playoffs and stuff like that, and that where you lose out at in the playoff, determines where you're gonna be at on the draft board for the most part. But as far as this NBA season, so far the West is very competitive. The East is the East has kind of always been the East, not super competitive. I don't want to say a lot of the teams in the East are like mediocre, but they kind of tend to be more mediocre. The West is, I feel like for the most part, it's always been superior to the East. The only good thing the Eastern Conference ever had was LeBron. He was the one that was really representing the East a lot of those times when they went for my lifetime, for the past couple of years. But yeah, the Pelicans do play tomorrow. I feel like the Pelicans will come out with a lot of tenacity tomorrow. They gotta come out with a lot of tenacity. They gotta play fierce. To get back in a position to where they don't have to be in the play-in, because this year's play-in is different. You got the Lakers and Golden State in the play-in. The last couple of years, you had typical teams you would expect to be in the play-in. But this year, you got like top teams, even though they don't have a top record. Those are teams that you still would not underestimate, like a Steph Curry led Golden State Warriors. You got a LeBron James led Lakers. I wouldn't want to see that team in an elimination game.
Okay, coach, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree 100% with King Ray. I mean, basically, the Pelicans, at one point they had a lot of good momentum and a lot of good mojo going in the right direction. However, it seems as if, as of late, they hit a couple snags and they could potentially find themselves in the playing tournament. That's one thing I kind of always said, the last handful of shows. First and foremost, you want to avoid the playing tournament. You want to be in at least the fourth, the fifth, or the sixth seed. You want one of those three spots, one. And second of all, you want to be fully healthy. It seems as if Bi, he's kind of been the individual that's kind of been nicked up the most. So in terms of health, you want Brandon Ingram, you want Zion, you want CJ McCollum, you want Jonas Valanciunas, you want Herb Jones, you want Jose Alvarado, you want Larry Nance Jr., you want Trey Murphy, you want all your big guns healthy going into the playoffs. And the last thing you want is to get hot at the right time of year, and you won't go into the playoffs with momentum. So not only do you want to be healthy, you
I mean,
want
the
to avoid
first
the
thing.
playing tournament. You want to avoid the playing tournament, but you won't go into the playoffs hot at the right time of year. And it seems as if the way they're going, they're not going to get all of those things accomplished.
You mean that's the first thing you want, huh? You said that's the last thing you want.
No, because guess what? Because we're just going to say hypothetically. Just say they were the
No,
first seed.
you didn't realize what I'm saying. You said the last thing they want is to go into the playoffs hot.
Yeah, that's my point. So my point is, you being healthy going into the playoffs, it supersedes having momentum going into the playoffs. Because guess what? If just say they was to get the number one seed in the playoffs, but Zion and Brandon Ingram hurt. I mean, you're going into the playoffs with momentum, but your two best players are hurt. So that's the
Oh,
point.
I see what you're saying now. Cause like,
Yeah,
like, like when you said it, you was like, you don't want to go into the playoffs. I'm like, why wouldn't you want to go into the? But you're saying you don't want to. You rather go into the playoffs cold, fully healthy, rather than going in hot.
yeah,
Not,
well, that's why I ranked them. I said, first you want to be healthy, you want to have momentum going into the playoffs, and that's the reason why I said it the way I said it. You want to have first, you want
yeah, I understand. It
yeah,
didn't register at first.
yeah. So that's all I'm saying, just to kind of reiterate the points I made. First you want to avoid the playing tournament. Then you want to be healthy. And then lastly, you want to be hot going into the playoffs. So you want to have all of those things in that order. So, like I said, you want to have momentum going into the playoffs. But I think you want to be healthy more than having that momentum going in. But you also want to avoid the playing tournament. So if you could get all three of those things, that's what you really want.
Okay, anything else dealing with the NBA and or draft?
Well, in terms of the draft, it's kind of like a different, you know, what King Ray was saying. He was accurate from the standpoint wouldn't necessarily be talking about the draft in its totality. I don't know if you basically you made this like a separate topic, but more than anything, when we talk, we was going to talk, but the draft, we was talking about Bronny James. He's leaving USC. Some speculating that he's going to transfer to another school. Other individuals speculating that he's going to enter into the NBA draft. So I think that's what you was talking about in terms of the draft. And, me personally, I know you might not have wanted us to jump right into the next topic yet, but truthfully speaking, I know some people are going to
Come on,
disagree
come
with me,
on, bro.
and some people going to say, Coach, you're kind of harsh. Truthfully speaking, I don't think Bronny James is ready for the NBA at this point. I think his game needs to develop more. And in addition to that, just because he's LeBron James' son, I know the Lakers would draft him in the first round. A lot of other teams probably wouldn't. But me personally, I don't think he's good enough for the NBA yet. One. And then two, the fact that he's LeBron James' son is going to, a lot of pressure is going to come with that. A lot of pressure for him to live up to the expectations of his dad. And truthfully speaking, I think he needs to work on and develop his game even more. So I think he'll be better served if he whether he stayed at USC or whether he transferred to another school. I think it'll be in his best interest to stay in college. But I know LeBron James's career is winding down. He's in the twilight of his career. And that's probably the reason why Bronny is deciding if he does, enter the draft, he's going to enter the draft because he wants to play with his dad and vice versa. So if he does enter the NBA draft, I think that's what it is. But from what I'm understanding, he's leaving USC to enter the NBA draft. So that's probably what you were referring to in terms of the draft, Kate.
Ray?
Yeah, since we're on this topic, I'll just stay on it. Yeah, I agree with Coach from the point of I don't think he's ready for the NBA. I'm pretty sure a lot of people would agree. And it's like, no, you're not even being harsh. You're just telling the truth. Everybody knows the truth. He's not ready for the NBA. Bronny is the type of person, he should spend all 4 years in college. But we all know the agenda is for LeBron to win a championship with his son to solidify himself in a completely different atmosphere from anybody else who has ever played the game of basketball or ever played in the NBA. Tell me anybody else who has ever won a championship, an NBA championship with their son. Michael Jordan can't, say that. Rest in peace to Kobe Bryant, but he can't say that. It would have been dope to see Gigi, in college and make it to the WNBA. But rest in peace to her soul too. But Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Nobody else could be like, I won a championship with my son, and not only win a championship with their son, play in the same era as their son. Like that should speak for itself. Like you played in that many generations. You played through that many generations. It ought to speak, that alone. The fact that you get to play in the same during the same time as his son. It's not even the fact that Bronny playing with LeBron James or winning a championship. I feel like Bronny could get drafted to any team. And the fact that LeBron can play at the same time in his with the son in the same league, like that's kind of like dope. And we all know there was always a game plan, that was always the agenda, but we already know like to play in the same league at the same time as your son is already dope in itself. But to play on the same team and win a championship with your son, That's like somebody start playing the song like Father Like Son by the game. Because like if LeBron James and Bronny wins a championship together, like that's the song that's gonna come to your head. Like Father Like Son by the game. But that's all I got to say about that. It's kind of dope when you think about it from a storyline standpoint. And I feel like in sports today, that's what people mainly care about is the storyline. But from a realistic X and O's basketball standpoint, we all know he's not ready. But we already know what the agenda is. See him play with his dad, and I feel like that's what everybody wants to see. I feel like we rather see him play with his dad rather than see him develop.
Well,
Yeah, because Ray, I think once he has that initial time with his son on the court in the NBA, then he's gonna hang up his jersey.
let me give a kind of rebuttal to what King Ray said. I have to disagree. I'm gonna be truthful. I don't think the objective is for him to win a championship with his son because, truthfully speaking, I'm sure he wants to win another championship. But let's be real. The Lakers don't have a. I don't think the Lakers are championship contenders at this point. And add Bronny James to that is not going to help their team. I think more than anything, his objective is just to play with his son. Now, unless they could get like maybe uh, a third superstar to join their team for pretty much little or nothing, I don't think it'd be realistic for us to say that he would want to win a championship. I'm sure he would want to win a championship with his son,
That's the
but
thing.
but the fact, no, what you were saying, King Ray?
I was about to say that's the thing. The goal is whether Bronny is or not on the team. The objective is always to win a championship.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean that's the objective, but realistically speaking, they're not a championship contender. I mean, the fact that at this age and stage in his career, that LeBron James is the best player on the Lakers is an indictment on the fact that they're not even a championship contender. At this point, it should be AD's team, and LeBron should be in a secondary role, and then thereafter you should have complementary pieces to kind of help you get over the hump to win that championship. I ain't gonna lie, them getting rid of some of the players that helped them win a championship that they won in a bubble, you know, getting rid of all of those players to bring in Westbrook, because they had players at the time like Dwight Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee. They ended up letting Alex Caruso go. Uh KCP, he went to the Denver Nuggets and he won a championship. So I'm not gonna lie, and even playoff Rondo, those guys is what kind of would help the Lakers. They had the right role players. But I think at this point, AD should be the best player on the team. He's not. He's injury prone. He's inconsistent. I think he's been playing better lately than he was in the past. But I think either they need a third superstar on that team or they need some much better role players. And truthfully speaking, I don't see either one of those things happening in the near future. So that's why I say I don't think it's realistic for us to put them. I mean, if they lose enough games, they might not even make the play-in tournament. So adding Bronny James to their team is not going to make them a whole lot better. What they need is, like I say, a third superstar, which is unrealistic. Their cap situation won't allow that. Either that or they need much better role players. So at the end of the day, I think the main objective is for him to play with his son. Of course, he would want to win a championship, but the Lakers aren't championship contenders. That's my, man rebuttal of what you were saying.
All right, guys, let's move on to open discussion, coach.
All right. In terms of my open discussion topic is, a lot of these athletes, whether it's the before mentioned LeBron James and JJ Redick, whether it's Shaquille O'Neal, whether it's Cam Newton, whether it's Shannon Sharp, it's like in terms of the podcast landscape, because our show is pretty much from a fan's perspective and from our own point of view. But it seems like the the sports. I mean, the athletes podcast. We also Jeff T got his own podcast. Uh, you got a lot of these athletes, and I'm missing a bunch. You have so many athletes that have podcasts. Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce have a podcast. Of course, you got the Up the Smoke podcast with Matt Barnes and with Steven Jackson. So, my open discussion topic is: do you think it's better for athletes to have the podcast, or you think the shows on old media like you know Undisputed on FS1, First Take on ESPN, from a programming standpoint? What you prefer, the podcast from an athlete like Cam Newton, or the old media type shows like Undisputed or First Take? That's my open discussion question.
Ray.
I mean, it really doesn't matter to me. You can have a. I feel like both sides can have a perspective. You want the actual person who is in the position, like the athletes, and when you everything that you do is in first person. And sometimes it's good to get a third person perspective on a lot of things. So that's what analytics come in at. So it's like while you're in the moment, while you're in the game, you're not gonna notice a lot of things. So like that's the importance of like coaches. When a player is out there playing, they don't see everything that's going on. You only see what's in front of you. You can't see what's behind you or on side of you. But a coach, or a person that's in the stands, they could see the full picture. So I feel like both people deserve, to have a say so, because we ain't gonna sit here and act like Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless, has not given, made some good points. They've made some really horrible points, but they also made some very good points as well. But players could also give that inside perspective that people who have never played the game, or who have never made it to that position, they could give insight that no one else may have or know.
That's an excellent take, King Ray. What are your thoughts, Kay?
I'm with Ray. You want both perspectives. You want the person that has actually been in those shoes, as well as somebody that's outside looking in. Because without the outside looking in, how can you tell someone as what they are looking for in a fan if you haven't been the fan and you have just played in the league? So any other open discussion, guys?
What about you, King Ray? What is your open discussion topic if you had one?
Um, we want to talk about the NCAA women's.
I think that was Kay's next topic.
Okay. I mean, I could touch on something pertaining to it, but it won't touch on that topic.
All right,
Um,
that's cool.
open discussion. Who do y'all think? So tomorrow at I believe the game starts at 2. Tomorrow at 2. You got the number one seed South Carolina and the number one seed Iowa, which everybody kind of predicted this was going to be, the national championship game. Who do y'all predict, will win it? Me personally, I'm rooting for South Carolina. I think South Carolina will win it. But just to get y'all perspectives and y'all insight, who y'all think will be the women's national championship, but will be the women's national champion?
You go first on this one, Kay.
I'm hoping it's South Carolina. Um, I see, them doing some good things. I would hope they will up their game, just like LSU. I saw so many things that they needed to change that they could have, like, I'm not gonna jump on that ahead of time, but with LSU, but same as with South Carolina. So there are great potential in that team that I wish they will horn in on. But I'm hoping it will be them. Coach.
Well, from my perspective, I know Caitlin Clark is America's darling, America's sweetheart. I think probably the vast majority of the country is probably pulling for Iowa. But me personally, I want South Carolina to win. I want Dawn Staley and her team to win a national championship. And I think they're gonna pull it off. I mean, the fact that you've gone this far, without even losing. I mean, I think that says a lot. I think they're gonna finish the deal and they're gonna win the championship.
I kind of want to add on another thing too, very quick. Um, last night when UConn played Iowa, it was a very controversial call towards the end. With the off ball with the screen, and they called it a moving pick, and they had like 9 seconds left. Iowa was up by 1 point, and Paige Becker was getting ready to take a potential game winning shot, and the referees kind of pretty much took it out the players' hands. I won't give a lot of kudos to UConn. I don't want to say they shut Caitlin Clark down, but Caitlin Clark did not have a good game, and I feel like South Carolina will capitalize on that. But the reason I brought that up, I want to ask y'all a brief question. Um, what do y'all think about referees, in particular calls, being made in clutch time? Because when if you were to go watch that controversial call, I'm not gonna lie, it was a moving pick. Like she was moving her body, but with 9 seconds left on the clock, everybody was saying like, yeah, it was an illegal screen. But in that position, you don't make that call, especially if it doesn't truly disrupt the play. Because when a moving screen happened, the girl was still able to get over the screen, and it really didn't. How with some moving screens, it would really like knock a person on the floor or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like that moving screen, it really didn't affect the play. It was like one of those petty moving screens that a referee could have easily ignored, and nobody would have made anything about it. But I want to get y'all opinions. Like, do y'all think that referees should make game deciding calls in clutch time like that?
Well, in my personal opinion, King Ray, I think it's like you said earlier, it's all about perspective. Because there were instances. I just kind of give you an example. I remember the last championship that Jordan and the Bulls won. First on the defensive end, he was able to come and dig down on Karl Malone, and he knocked the ball out of Karl Malone's hand. That could have been a defensive foul from a reach and foul perspective. Because not only did he reach in and knock the ball away, but he knocked Karl Malone down. Then he got the ball on the offensive end. He was able to set up, and he was driving. As he was driving, he pushed Byron Russell off, and he crossed over, and he stepped back, and he hit the game-winning three-point shot. And then on the defensive end, they got to stop, and that was the end of the game. So the point I'm trying to make, a lot of individuals like, well, yeah, that was a good no call, blah 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 blah. You shouldn't, the referees shouldn't impact the end of the game. But in that particular instance, you had Utah Jazz fans that was like, hey, first of all, he fouled Karl Malone. And then in addition to that, he pushed Byron Russell off to give himself space to hit the game-winning shot. Whereas Bulls fans was thinking, well, hey, it's a good no call. So in that particular instance, you kind of have to walk a fine line in terms of, do you think the players should decide the game at the end of the game on the court itself? Should you call the same calls from the opening tip to the final buzzer the same way, no matter what the situation is? So it's a fine line. I mean, even from a coaching perspective, there were instances where, I'm looking at two other teams play and I'm saying, hey, this, that, and the third. But yet when it's my own team, I have a different point of view, a different perspective. So I think it's all about perspective. And then I've even seen lately, especially with the NBA players, there was this controversy in a late '90s, early 2000s with the LA Lakers and Sacramento Kings. The Lakers went on to win the championship that year, but there
Right.
was this rogue official named Tim Donaghy that was basically, he was betting on the games, and he was making calls that kind of was benefiting his bet, what he was betting on.
But
So, a lot of players like Rasheed Wallace have been talking about this lately on his podcast. Jeff Teague talked about it. Gilbert Arenas has talked about it. So, one component of it is, is it, is the fixed in terms of, Is this particular official betting on games, or does he
No,
have
I kind of want to. I probably should have been more detailed about this too. I want you to focus more on a component of the of the penalty.
decide
Like
decide
no,
deciding?
not the deciding factor of it actually affecting the play because it was a screen, but it really if the play would have continued, like it wouldn't have really affected the play. You know what I'm saying? Like when you was giving that example about Michael Jordan, both of those things directly affected the play. But this really did not affect this did not affect the play in any kind of way. Like the girl got over the screen. It was not one of those big moving screens where it's like, oh man, like that's it was
She
one of those
ran into
things,
him.
huh?
Yeah, basically you saying she didn't run into her.
Right. It was one of those where she leaned her shoulder in a little bit. It was one of those moving type of screens.
Well, I mean, but it still kind of goes back to my initial point. I know in some instances you saying since it didn't affect the actual play itself,
Right.
maybe you should just let it ride. But again, from a coach's perspective,
You want it to
you
be
want
consistent.
you want to look at it from a standpoint of, hey, do you want this official to call the calls the same way from the opening tip to the final buzzer, or do you want them to pick and choose? So that's the point I was making.
I don't think they should pick and choose what, and I understand what you're saying, Ray, but you want to be fair, because you're gonna say, oh, because they're leading, should they have? But in a way, I feel like they should leave it up to the coach if that the team is up, and let's say they have the ball. Would you want to pass it or not? So I think that determines it also. So I really think, if it doesn't stop anything and they keep it going and they get the thumbs up from the coach, they could keep on. So little things like that can determine what how they can still be fair, but yet not you know stop things like you say, Ray. So I
And,
understand completely what you're saying.
and one other thing too, it kind of goes back to my point. I think the vast majority of the country, they want Iowa to win this championship.
Right.
So I think that's one thing that you know you didn't overtly state it, but you know I think you kind of in a subtle way was like, yeah, they kind of wanted Iowa to win anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like the underlying point, and I think that's a in terms of the criticism that's been coming from behind it, I think it's a valid point because you got to realize officials and referees, they're human beings too.
They biased.
So, so if you want this one particular team to win, your calls might favor that particular team if
Right.
you want that team to win. And I'm not saying the official was intentionally being biased, but I'm telling you, I think at the end of the day, I think it's a situation where, you know, because for people just to say, hey, I'm not biased, man, we all human beings. We all have, whether it's overt bias or whether it's, you know, subconscious bias that we don't even realize we have. So at the end of the day, maybe deep down, maybe he subconsciously he wanted Iowa to win that game.
Okay, with our last open discussion, LSU with and eight Angel Reese. Start us off, Ray. What are your thoughts with LSU losing and Angel Reese moving on to the WNBA? What are your thoughts?
So me personally, my thoughts on that game with LSU. Kim Mulkey did not coach her best game, which also causes people to believe like, man, something was up, because it's like, and me and Rudolph was actually talking earlier, and LSU's best defender, Big Four, Flange Johnson, barely even guarded Caitlin Clark. They didn't put Flange on Caitlin Clark until the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter. And I'm like, what's the point of putting her on her now? Like they had Haley Van Lit on her the entire game. And she got cooked, which everybody knew she was about to get cooked. And she didn't get cooked just because it was Caitlin Clark. I've been watching LSU girls all season. Haley Van Lit defense is not, she's not the best defender on the team. So I already knew, Caitlin Clark was gonna cook her. But like they didn't comparing the way LSU played defense to compared to the way UConn played defense against Caitlin Clark yesterday, like LSU seemed like they really did not horn in on stopping Caitlin Clark. I don't remember them doubling Caitlin Clark too often. They didn't put their best defender on Caitlin Clark. So, but I mean, everybody knew Iowa was going to win this game somehow. I kind of realized that halfway through when the game was at halftime and it was tied. I told myself, I'm like, look, man, LSU not about to win this game. They got all this story. They didn't prop the Caitlin Clark up. They somehow Caitlin Clark is going to win this game, and I'm not saying that to take anything away from Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark is a beast, but she's not the best all around player. Everybody knows that Paige Becker is a better player than Caitlin Clark. But Caitlin Clark is more electrifying to watch, dog. This girl really shooting 3-pointers from the logo. Like you can't script that or you can't, make that up. So she's a phenomenal 3-point shooter. But and her driving ability to the goal is pretty decent. And she's a phenomenal passer, but like in other areas of her game, like she doesn't have a mid-range shot. She can't make those contested mid-range shots. She does not have good defense. But not to focus too much on Caitlin Clark, but to get back to LSU. As far as injuries going to the WNBA, it's kind of was her world. She could have stayed for another year and went on a run. As long as she's there, LSU always has a chance, and LSU still has a chance. LSU is deep, so LSU will be favored to um, to go to the championship. To go to the Final Four, Elite Eight again. Um, a lot of people do say that she is overrated, and I mean, I wouldn't say she's overrated. Um, she's aggressive and she plays defense, and
No,
she
I think he was referring to Caitlin Clark.
oh yeah, relax and calm, Rain. You gotta kind of be specific on that. Because the reason why I assumed he was talking about injuries, because when you go in the comment section of a lot of these posts pertaining to women's college basketball, Angel Reese does get a lot of hate. I ain't gonna lie, dog. She gets some unnecessary hate. And we all know where that came from. It came from the, you can't see me. And a lot of people didn't like that. And a lot of people do say Angel Reese is overrated. And I mean, I wouldn't say she's overrated. People just expecting her to be Asia Wilson or something like that. And I'm like, bro, nah. No, she is what she is. She's a great rebounder. She plays excellent. She plays great defense, and she's very aggressive. And she's kind of limited offensively, and she could always develop that, whether she wants to come to LSU for another year or go to the WNBA. But she chose to go to the WNBA. It's her life. I'm happy. I'm happy for her. And LSU is stacked. LSU got a lot of dogs, so I feel like it was selfless of her to go to the WNBA, so those other people could get a chance to start and play. But as far as like the LSU Iowa game, LSU had the far superior team. LSU had the better team. But the game plan just wasn't. I don't know, bro. Like they didn't play defense on Caitlin Clark like how they should have. And I feel like they could have played way better defense. Kim Mulkey did not use her bench. She only played 2 people off the bench. But man, that's it. You can't win it every year. And just LSU got to wait again till next year, and we just gonna see who wins it this year for the women's, and I believe it will be Dawn Staley. Dawn Staley will, definitely watch. She was actually at the game, for UConn versus Iowa, and just look for them to clamp up Caitlin Clark, because the same way Caitlin Clark got revenge on LSU, South Carolina want to get revenge on Caitlin Clark as well, because Caitlin Clark did knock them out of the tournament last year. But that's it.
Now, Ray, I agree with you with LSU not playing their best game. That's why I said I saw so much potential in them that they weren't executing. Because if you see one of your players not defending another player like that someone else can, why not swap them up? Why not put someone on them that could bring your defense up, your everything, the rebounding? It just will make things flow so much better. And not just that, but I didn't see them helping Angel Reese like I felt like they could have. It was just so much that was going on that wasn't being done. So you had some great points, Ray. So what are your thoughts, coach?
Well, I think he made some excellent points. Uh, and from a coach's perspective, because a lot of times I look at things from a coach's perspective because I am a coach. Sometimes people question some of the decisions you make, but you have a specific reason why you do some of the things you do. But even with that being said, I don't see no real reason why you would put Haley Van Lith on Caitlin Clark. Me personally, and you got to realize, King Ray, just aside from that point, that which was an excellent point, you have a lot of other individuals that basically were saying, like, they thought that Kim Mulkey made some questionable decisions. Just outside of that, like in terms of the way she went about the game against Iowa, you know, I'm not saying it's conspiracy theory or they basically saying that Kim Mulkey intentionally let Iowa won that particular game, but basically they were like it was head scratching decisions that she made. So, I think you made a very valid point, excellent point, and I think in terms of South Carolina, you right. The fact that basically Iowa got their revenge on LSU, and I think South Carolina is going to look to do the same. I know so many people want Iowa to win a national championship and Caitlin Clark to be, like relaxing, calm. Rand said, like she want her to be like the female Larry Bird, but I think South Carolina going to do an excellent job taking her away, and I think South Carolina is going to win the championship. But in terms of LSU, I think they had so much potential for winning that particular game. Now, in terms of Angel Reese, to me, she kind of always made it clear that she could make more money in college with the NIL deal as opposed to going to the WNBA where you're only going to make a fraction of what she going to make in terms of NIL money. Unless she got endorsement of sponsorships going into the WNBA,
She do.
yeah, I kind of figured she did. And not only that, one other thing too, unless she's kind of guaranteed that she's going to go into a big market like a New York or LA or Chicago, one of those type of markets, I don't see why she would leave LSU. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not, of course, Southern is my team. We all know that, because I'm a diehard Southern University fan, but I like LSU also. To me, unless from a professional standpoint, unless she's going to be in a certain situation where she could thrive and be successful, to me, her going to the WNBA, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I support whatever decision she made, but from a financial standpoint, to me, it seems like it would have been more beneficial to her staying at LSU, and not only that, they were going to be in contention probably to go to Final Four and maybe win another national championship. But I think the fact that she had so many haters, I think that was part of the reason why she ended up going to WNBA because, like Raymond was saying, she caught a lot of flack. She caught a lot of, I'm not even gonna say constructive criticism. Just basically a lot of people just were jealous of her, a lot of haters. So maybe that kind of what pushed her to the WNBA because you have with the name Acho, he kind of came at her, and in addition to that, she just meant a lot of criticism. People talking about why she was crying on the podium after the game. And of course, Haley Van Lith and Flau'jae Johnson, they came to her defense. But more than anything, maybe she's just ready to go on the greener pastures. Either way, I supported whatever decision she's made.
Right, and I kind of want to touch on that a little bit too, very briefly. It's almost like people don't want certain people to be human, bro. It's like, coach, me, you, and our other cousins, and and our uncle. We go play basketball with each other all the time.
Without
We
question.
fuck each other all the time, right?
Hmm.
And that's the thing too. Is like, but with her, like, they didn't like her. They were saying she was classless because she talked trash, and I'm like, who doesn't talk trash? Like with the Houston Rockets and the Golden State Warriors, like, did you see what transpired with that?
No, I didn't see that particular situation.
But pretty much, what's his name? Tyree Eason. He used to play basketball for LSU. He pretty much wore Warriors come out to play from the movie The Warriors.
Uh-huh.
And he pretty much wore a Warriors come out to play shirt. And some trash talk before the game, during the game. The Warriors won the game by a larger margin. Then Steph Curry went got 3 bottles, from that iconic scene from the movie The Warriors. Warriors, come
And he
on.
cleaned them together.
Yeah, pretty much, all that. And it's like nobody's looking at that saying that's classless. But Angel Reese, she first went viral for blocking somebody's shot with one shoe on. Like her shoe came off and she had one shoe in the hand and she blocked somebody's shot. And like that went viral. And she was blocking their shot and talking trash and stuff. But all of a sudden, you do it to one particular player. Now you're painted as the villain. And when a particular role is forced on you that you don't want, sometimes people are just, what, I'm going to accept this role because people are forcing this role upon me. And that's what she said. She was like, everybody wants us to be the villains, and she just took the role. But last time I checked, anytime you take a loss in life, you're going to feel sad. And it's almost as if people's like, she doesn't deserve to cry. She doesn't deserve to be a human, which was kind of funny to me.
Yeah, and not only that, we've been talking about it and highlighting it, for about a year now. It's ridiculous the double standard when it comes to Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. It's like anytime Angel Reese did anything that could be deemed classless, quote unquote, it's like, come on, man. Caitlin Clark would do the same exact thing and she get praised for it. She's a fiery competitor. What an athlete, blah, blah, blah. But Angel Reese does that, especially Barstool Sports. I have no respect for their platform, but basically, she classless, she this, she that. I'm like, look at the ridiculous double standard. It kind of reminds me of, as a boxing fan, you would have, HBO boxing, somebody like Floyd Mayweather Jr., he would be on his toes, he would boxing, outboxing. This is boring. This is boring boxing. And we don't want to see this and blah, 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 blah. But yet somebody like Oscar De La Hoya does the exact same thing. What a performance. And I'm like, do we not see the double standard here? And I think that's what it is when it comes to, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Is a huge double standard. And I think that's what it is. No matter who we talking about that was criticizing her, is a double standard. Because I guarantee if Caitlin Clark did some of these same things, either she would be praised for it or it wouldn't even be mentioned.
Yes, and that is really the truth, and that's where that biasness comes in at. You have to elevate your players or elevate your people, whomever it is, to make yourself look good or make them look good or whatever the situation may be. Any, Anything else, guys?
For this particular topic, not at all. What about you, King Ray?
Factor cap. Start us off, coach.
All right. In my particular factor cap, I don't know if y'all are aware of this, but the mayor of Dallas, Kansas City, they had a vote in terms of getting a new stadium for the Kansas City Chiefs, Kansas City Royals, or make renovations to the stadium. The city of Kansas City shot that particular bill down. I don't know if they don't have the money, whatever the case may be. So Dallas mayor, he made it known that he wants the Kansas City Chiefs to come to Dallas. Now, me personally, I was saying, of course, we all know the St. Louis Rams, they won a Super Bowl like the late 90s. And then they eventually ended up moving to LA. And to me, the only thing that would have been worse is if the year after the greatest show on turf won the Super Bowl, did a move to LA like the very next year. So my fact the cap question is if the Kansas City Chiefs move to Dallas, it would make Jerry Jones as the owner of the Dallas Cowboys. It would make him step his game up as an owner. Fact the cap.
Fact, 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 and that's all I gotta say. Fact.
What about you, Kay? Based on what I just went over.
It's hard to say. In some it depends on all the whole scenario. To be truthfully honest with you, what things are playing in, but leaning towards more of a fact.
Yeah, and I think the thing about it more than anything is, to me, it just kind of seems like, Kansas City, they don't have the type of financial resources that is going to take or be necessary to keep both their NFL franchise and their NBA franchise. I'm sorry, Major League Baseball, the MLB franchise. So it don't seem like they have the financial capability to keep the NFL franchise and the Major League Baseball franchise. Whereas we know in Dallas, the oil money is ridiculous. So the mayor of Dallas, I guess he's tired of the Dallas Cowgirls being a secondary team, and basically he wants a championship contender. And if you get the Kansas City Chiefs, as long as Pat Mahomes, as long as he's there and he's healthy, they're gonna be a perennial Super Bowl contender. They could potentially three-peat. And I think he wants a champion. And with that being said, that would make I'm almost certain I'm agreeing with both of you. That would make Jerry Jones have to step his game up if they had another franchise in his city. I mean, I don't know how that would work. I don't know if Dallas is big enough to support two sports teams,
And
but
I don't, and that's what makes me think that's a part of it. I don't think they are big enough
LA
to.
got two teams.
No, 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 no. We're not. What? Where are you talking about? Two NFL teams?
Yeah, Los
yeah,
Angeles two and New York got two teams.
No, no, no. We're talking about Dallas.
no,
Yeah,
but no,
I don't feel like Dallas is big enough to support that.
no. I think that's the point she's making, King Ray. Like if you look at New York and LA from a size perspective, like those are like the probably two of the four biggest cities in this country.
right.
I mean, from a financial standpoint, I think Dallas probably has the money to support two franchises. But let's be real.
But it's not just Dallas. You got to think about the whole metroplex.
I know you're talking about the DFW area.
Right.
Yeah, I can kind of see what you're saying, but I don't know. It's I don't know.
Maybe Austin, Texas starting to, me honestly, I feel like I do agree with Kim. I mean, I do agree with Kay that I feel like Dallas shouldn't get two teams. It's gonna feel so weird because a lot of these Cowboy fans are diehard Cowboy,
Die hard. That's what I'm saying. It'll
and
be
it almost feel like they're it almost will feel like treason if the Chiefs come here, then all of a sudden people just jump the bandwagon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
well. I mean, but the thing about it is, you right from that standpoint. At one point we know the Cowboys were America's team, and they got so much support, so on and so forth. But people want a winner, and I know a lot of people. Most people probably wouldn't support the Chiefs. Of course, they probably would change their name because people don't realize, some of these other franchises would originally, whatever, So, but I'm almost certain it would be a name change. But even with that being said, I think a certain percentage of people would support them, just because from the standpoint of perennially they're going to be a contender as long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy.
Anything else, guys? Okay, let's move on to the NFL. Start us off, Coach?
Well, for my NFL fans, ordinarily we talk about our hometown team, the Saints. But for this, we're not gonna focus on the Saints. We're gonna focus on the Houston Texans. For those individuals that do not know, the the Buffalo Bills traded Stephon Diggs to the Houston Texans, and in turn, they got a second round draft pick for next year, but they gave up a sixth round pick for this year and a fifth round pick for next year. So, for those individuals that don't know, Stephon Diggs was, he was a very good receiver with the Minnesota Vikings before he ended up going to the Buffalo Bills. And this particular season, he was disgruntled uh, with, I guess the situation for Buffalo. He kind of made things uncomfortable for the front office, and he wanted out, and they pretty much granted him his wish. So he's been traded to the Houston Texans. From a Houston Texans perspective of things, like they have a lot of good momentum. They got C.J. Stroud at quarterback. Now you add Stephon Diggs at wide receiver. They have a good young team. They have a good young coach. They have so much momentum in their favor. And to me, it just kind of seems like, from a trade perspective, the Houston Texans just completely fleeced the Buffalo Bills. And I mean, I know, King Ray always talks about, cancers in the locker room. But to me, even if Stephon Diggs, of course, he was by far their best receiver. But even if he was a cancer in the locker room, there's no way you couldn't find a better trade partner in terms of getting more back in return. Like that second round pick they're getting from the Texans, it's not even in this year's draft. It's in next year's draft. And not only that, but you gave up a pick in this year's draft, even though they low picks, a fifth and a sixth round pick. You gave up a pick in this year's draft and next year's draft. In addition to that, they got Stephon Diggs. So it seems as if that was a terrible deal. The Bills front office, they're trying to rationalize and justify it. Basically, they're saying it's addition by subtraction. But even with that being said, even if he was that much of a problem, I'm almost certain you could have found a trade partner in which you would have got more in return, for the deal that you was going to put on the table. So to me, I'm just kind of scratching my head. I'm like, it's a terrible deal, and I think the Texans won this trade by far. What are your thoughts, King Ray?
I would agree. The Texans did win this trade. It just goes to show you the amount of value that they seen in Stephon Diggs at this point in his career. I think Stephon Diggs will be the number 2 receiver or possibly number 3 receiver at the Texans. Because he's starting to trickle into the tail end of his career as well. But man, when I seen the trade, of course, I feel like whenever I ain't gonna say it's obviously like even if the Texans would have gave up a pretty decent player, I still feel like that would have been a win for the Texans because they got Stephon Diggs in return. You know what I'm saying? Even if the Texans would have gave the Buffalo Bills a draft pick from this year, I still feel like it would have been a win. So. But as far as that trade, I was kind of shocked when I seen it, but not too shocked. Um, everybody knew that the contract negotiation was about to come up with Stephon Diggs, and people probably like we all knew that either side wasn't gonna come to an agreement. Yes, Stephon Diggs is a cancer in the locker room, and he's a bag chaser. He's a person, he values the bag first over championships. Even though every time he loses in the playoffs, he does this emotional thing where he stands and he watches the other team celebrate. But it's like, look, man, it's either you're going to value money or you're going to value like team chemistry. Because when you're trying to win championships, you're going to take pay cuts. And I feel like the reason the Texans traded him because they know he was not willing to take a pay cut. Because if you ask me, I felt like, Josh Allen is a great quarterback. He did have the turnover bug this year, but we're not going to act like Josh Allen is not a playoff caliber quarterback. Like just the other year that the Chiefs and the Bills had a classic playoff game. You know what I'm saying? So I really didn't understand why, he really wanted to leave the Bills. I felt like he was in a good situation. You're going to have some down years, and every year is not going to be a great phenomenal year. Like trust me, we know that with Drew Brees, we went 7-9 for 3 straight years. But after that, the Saints offense and the Saints as a collective, found their identity again, and the Saints became a playoff team again. So I feel like it's kind of the same thing with the Bills. They went through a little stretch this year where they wasn't, kind of themselves, but my and it kind of showed like the contract negotiation plays a part in it as well. But it kind of does look like Stephon Diggs wanted to jump the ship when it seemed like the ship started sinking.
Well, let me give a real quick butter to King Ray. I agree with most of what you said, but I strongly disagree with you saying that he should have been willing to take uh, a pay cut because I'm gonna kind of lean towards what Shannon Sharp and Gilbert Arenas says. In terms of a professional athlete, excuse me, as a professional athlete, you only have a certain shelf life in which you could do what you're doing. You know, I think sports is the only realm in arena where you expect it, to like make a sacrifice for the greater good of the team. It's the only realm where billionaires convince the average person that millionaires are selfish and greedy behind money. Now just think about it. A billionaire is calling a millionaire selfish, which is ridiculous to me. So I feel like as a player, you should get every penny you could possibly get. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying in the process you can win. And I know what you're saying. Some people might say, in some instances, you kind of either have to choose between, winning a championship or getting as much money as you could possibly get. To me, I think sometimes you can have the best of both worlds where you could get as much money as you possibly can while competing for a championship. So you can compete for the championship and get the bag at the same time. I think it's possible and feasible. And, you know, I can't think of what player it was, but I know one player had a great season this year, and the front office asked him to take a pay cut. And I'm like, what? So I think for them, to get rid of Stephon Diggs, I think, of course he wanted to get paid, and I don't blame him. But I think for them to get rid of him, I think either because a lot of people feel like it's a deep draft in terms of wide receiver. So either they probably gonna try to get a receiver or two in the draft, or I think they might have plans for Brandon Ayuk to potentially replace Stephon Diggs because the same way the Kansas City Chiefs traded L'Jarius Sneed, I think it's more of a situation where they want to do right by Sneed, and they knew, they're a perennial Super Bowl contender. Even though I felt like he was their best DB, he was their best cover corner, they knew they couldn't afford to pay him fair market value, so they got rid of him early. And I think they did what was in the best interest of Snead. Whereas I think in the Bills situation, I think either they probably gonna have plans to potentially bring in Brandon Ayuk, or to potentially draft a couple good receivers, in this particular draft, whether it's Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU or whoever the case may be. So I think they have plans on drafting a receiver or two in this draft, or maybe going after somebody like a Brandon Ayuk. But in terms of, Diggs potentially giving up money, for the greater good of the Bills, I feel like, my mindset is, as a professional athlete, you only have a certain shelf life. I think you should get every penny you could potentially get.
Okay, Ray, do you have anything else? Coach, do you have anything else? Before
I
we
don't.
before we move on to our closing, we want to give a shout out to Big Reg, Billy Bob, Relaxing Calm Rain, Locker Room Talk, Story Time, Motivation to be a Millionaire. We want to give a shout out to Jared 011 Green, and shout out to everyone else that are watching. Thank you. We all appreciate your love and your support. Peace and blessings to you. And Ray, We want to hear your closing remarks. Start us off.
All right, y'all. King Ray. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thanking y'all for listening, and thank y'all for y'all opinions. Y'all can follow me at you on subscribe to me on YouTube. Is at the bottom, Racewing225, and y'all can also follow me on Instagram, which is at the bottom of the screen, underscore King Ray with two Y's, followed by underscore. Thank y'all for checking us out and supporting us. No, we hope y'all have a blessed and phenomenal day.
Okay, Coach, tell us,
Well,
tell us,
well, before I
people.
take,
Okay.
before I tell everybody where they can find me, shout out to everybody that came through and showed some love. In terms of like the actual chat, you know, a lot of people that's in the chat, they content creators also. So go check out uh my brother Jared 11 Green on his channel. He had a huge interview yesterday, and we also gonna do the Southern Baller Show tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time tomorrow night. So come check us out on the Southern Baller Show tomorrow at 7:30. Also, in terms of relaxing calm rain, he does rain videos. If you're trying to get to sleep or take a nap, go check that out. Appreciate relaxing calm rain. I appreciate motivation to be a millionaire. If you like inspirational stories, kind of like what's the content creator? His name, like Darman. Except, these are like inspirational type stories. If you like that, check out Motivation to Be a Millionaire. Uh, Also check out Living Big with Big Reg. If you in a in a man talk or in a football, he's a Ravens fan. He also follows myself and my brother Jerry Loving Green on his channel. So, he has like grown man conversations. And in addition to that, he talks about the Baltimore Ravens. Sometimes he talks about professional wrestling. He might talk about WrestleMania this weekend. So check out Living Big with Big Reds. Check out Relax and Calm Rain, Motivation to Be a Millionaire. My brother Jared Loving Green. Also check out my other brother Brent Fox. He just did another It's Just Me podcast. So check them out. In terms of myself, you can catch me at Coach 67 Sports TV on all social media platforms, on X, which is formerly known as Twitter. You can catch me on Instagram, on TikTok. I started a Coach 67 Sports TV group for Facebook. So you can catch me at Coach 67 Sports TV on all social media platforms, on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, on TikTok. Hopefully y'all enjoyed today's show. We appreciate everybody that came through the show with some love. Of course, the plan is for us to hit 1,000 subscribers sooner than later. So if y'all have not done so already, subscribe to the channel. Hopefully y'all have a blessed, phenomenal evening. Hopefully y'all have a blessed, phenomenal weekend. We'll catch y'all on the rebound. Peace and blessings to everyone.
Guys, we want to thank you all for your love and support. We want, please, if you haven't done so, please like, subscribe, follow, share. If you have any comments or any topics you would like us to discuss, please put it in the comment section below. And for our closing quote, we're going to quote Kobe Bryant. It's the one thing you can control. You are responsible for how people remember you or don't. So don't take it lightly. So, guys, have a great evening. And till we talk, see you next time. Bye bye. Blessings.